introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver.
At age 12, I was into lemonade stands and garage sales and all kinds of different things. So it's in my blood. It's in my DNA. My dad is turning 90 this year, and he just retired from the insurance business 3 years ago. So that's 71 years of entrepreneurial blood that runs through my veins. I've been at it for the last 31 years. And as far as sports go, professional and amateur coaching, I own my own 2 franchises, 22 years in that cutthroat industry. So like you, my bottom line passion is marketing and world building.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. And tell us a little bit about your family came from insurance. Strangely, mine did as well. My father was vice president of an Atlas Life, a life insurance company for years. Did everything from agency management to underwriting to building management in a small life insurance company. And the rest of my family were all either State Farm, Prudential, or some other branch of that. So somehow I ended up strangely going into martial arts first. I think just to escape the family business, if for no other reason to begin with. But on the consulting end now, one of the things that I admire and frustrates me about the whole industry, but one thing I admire about your marketing is you're very clear, in your face, direct, no doubt at all about who you're targeting, who you want to work with, why you want to work with them, what you want to accomplish. Tell us about your branding on that and why you're so fearless in that approach.
Well, the who is everything, right? You know that better than anybody.
Yeah.
Or it's all about the who. So I know exactly who I'm after. I know who my target, my avatar is. I have it on a index recipe card. I wake up every day and serve that. That's the particular person, which is a 45 plus male, married with children, conservative, God-fearing, capitalist, drives an SUV, cheers for the Dallas Cowboys, likes Bill Belichick, all this kind of stuff. That's who I've been called to serve. I look at this now that I've been in multiple businesses. I've been called to serve 1 million elite men, and I know exactly, Stephen, who that is. And I get up every day. I don't have any gray areas. I like working with the male entrepreneur. I like working with the plus 45-year-old entrepreneur who's already made lots of money. Money is not the issue. They're concerned about their legacy. My guys, Stephen, they're terrified of being forgotten. Mm-hmm. They want to live a life of significance. They're not serving enough people. And it's amazing. Like, they join me to make more money. They join me to learn how to do marketing, and they already got that down pat. The big thing is it's the legacy building, it's the significance building, and pulling that all together. I call it BadAss world building, living life and doing business on their own terms. As you know, from dealing with financial advisors, insurance brokers, I don't care who it is, 99% of men and women, they go into business for freedom. It's the last thing they have. They build a prison. They're a slave to it 7 days a week. They age. So they forget the reasons they're in it. So what I do is, when they find me at age 45, 55, 65, they're like, Michael, I want to do things on my own terms. And then we build the business around the life. So for me, it's all about world building, doing what, if they want to work 60 hours, work 60 hours. If you want to work 7 hours, work 7 hours. But for God's sakes, 2 words, personal sovereignty is the key for me.
Oh, absolutely. And what is to me is fearless in your approach, and just I don't know. It seems like 99.9% of the financial industry, the insurance industry, they all want to say, I target everybody, everybody needs my service. You know, if they really narrow it down, they say, okay, 50 to 60 with $500,000 in assets or something like that. But then all of their communication becomes milquetoast, watered down, generalized. They're afraid of offending anybody, of excluding anybody. And as we both know, if you're not willing to offend one end of the spectrum, you're not willing to attract the real audience you're looking for, right? And so, why do you think that is? Why are most people so afraid of doing what you've done so effectively?
Well, I think that 99% of the population is concerned about what other people think. And I know that from professional sports, my athletes cared about what people thought, my entrepreneurs care. So I think having thin skin is probably the greatest disability in entrepreneurship. You have to remember that we're not in the information age, we're in the attention age. It's like the great late Rush Limbaugh said, there's only three things that people want: attention, they want to be entertained, they want to be entertained, and they want to be entertained.
Right.
So I always remind myself of that. Like when I was in the insurance business, I was never in the insurance business. People ask me, it's the old Rolex CEO story where the guy sits down with the CEO of Rolex for lunch and he says, how's the watch business? Mm-hmm. And the CEO says, I have no idea. I'm in the luxury business. And I was never in the hockey business. I was never in the insurance business. I was never in the consulting business. I've never been in the barbershop business. And then I explained to people how I'm in the Michael McClean business. You're in the Stephen Oliver business. The more you're all in on that, the better you'll do. But I don't care whether people like me or love me. I just don't want them to ignore me, especially my top prospect. And it's really important that I repel 99.9% of the people who want that I can't help, then thus attracting. So I've never forgot what Kennedy and these guys say about you never underestimate the job at hand.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to think about the cell phone era that we live in now. Like I've got to literally Gary Halbert these guys. I've literally got to reach out and grab them by the throat. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I always remind myself of when I shoot a video, when I do a podcast, when I send a newsletter, when I send an email, I have a thing on my desk here at home that says, gun to your head, Michael, gun to your head. If I'm going to have any chance of cutting through the clutter, if I'm going to have any chance of getting my stuff consumed, then I've got to write, I've got to shoot videos, I've got to do all my marketing with a gun to the head. In other words, somebody putting a gun to my head, like the great Gary Halbert said, Michael, if this video doesn't get watched and consumed, boom, you're done. Same thing with my newsletter. So this is why I end up rewriting almost all my marketing. I'll write an email and then I'll rewrite it. I'll shoot a video and then I'll redo it. But we are in the attention industry now. And we're all built. You're building an audience. You built an audience in the martial arts. Like you can't build an audience if you don't speak exactly to that person. So, for me, we battle this thin skin all the time. And that's where my brass balls kind of attitude comes in with my guys. Like everything that we try to do, the guys that do extremely well, they finally decide they don't care about the opinions of people that don't matter.
Right.
I'll never forget going in the insurance business is people said, how did you do that in the insurance business? How did you 5X your dad's company? I didn't even have a license when I walked in the back door. I'd never been in the agency. And 5 years later, we're 5 times the size. And they said, how do you become number one in the country in 36 months? I never adjusted to the insurance business. I took the direct response marketing that I learned in the hockey business. In the hockey business, you got to fill the arena every 72 hours. Mm-hmm. So it's gun to the head in the sports business. So I came from that cutthroat business where if you don't win games and you don't sell out stadiums, you're gone, like the NFL, not for long. So when I brought that balls to the wall attitude to the insurance business, I had no competition whatsoever. But I never once adjusted to the insurance business. I never once adjusted to the consulting business. I never adjusted to the barbershop business. I just came in the back door of my dad's agency and I said, this is how you sell out a stadium. This is how you recruit a blue chip prospect. This is how you sell thousands of dollars of corporate sponsorship. And that was the secret, is looking around, Stephen, at what everybody else was doing in the industry. And I did the exact opposite. And that's where the BadAss moniker comes from. What does BadAss mean? It means I look around at what everybody's doing in every area of their life, and I do the exact opposite.
There you go. You stole my favorite quote again. Wasn't that Earl Nightingale? I think if you don't have a good business model,
Uncle Earl.
Look at what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. I love that. Unfortunately, probably a number of people listening to this aren't going to know who Gary Halbert is, and Halbert was one of the all-time geniuses, may he rest in peace, copywriters of all time. I don't know how much I have learned from Gary, and including his very idiosyncratic and unusual newsletter. I mean, it was extremely valuable. I remember one time opening it up, and the whole newsletter was pictures of his new Costa Rican girlfriend in bikinis, talking about how wonderful it was to go recruit a new girlfriend from Costa Rica. But one of his most famous ads was a personal full-page ad for himself, recruiting a girlfriend. I think he still has the record of the most mailed letter of all time for Halbert's Inc. Probably most people got it. The
Coat of arms.
Yeah, the coat of arms. I have researched the Oliver family. I have researched the McClean family, and we tracked down the coat of arms and so forth. And then they had a whole array of products that they did. Dan Kennedy has a great story about stumbling across Halbert because they happened to be from the same town, and Halbert was hiring like half of the teenagers and half the housewives in town to either run checks to the bank or to hand address envelopes for that business.
It just shows you Halbert is the king of being in the entertainment business. Like,
you bet.
His newsletter was the life and times of Gary Halbert.
Yeah.
I went to the GaryHalbertLetter.com, which is a free domain. And I had my assistant print off everyone. So I have boxes of those, and I read them all last year again.
Yeah.
But you're right. You'll have a publication that has nothing to do with anything, and you literally can't wait to read the next one.
Oh yeah.
It's part soap opera, life and times. My good friend Doberman Dan lived with Gary Halbert in Costa Rica, so the stories are true. But the thing about Halbert is when he would sit down to write, if you could get him to sit down to write, one of the greatest copywriters of all time. And he always had that gun to the head mentality. And he just did everything the exact opposite of everybody else. But he was, Stephen, in the personality business.
You bet. And it's an interesting parallel between my background. I went to Georgetown University thinking I was going to go on to a Harvard MBA and end up in Wall Street, and instead interrupted the flow and moved to Denver and opened 6 martial arts schools in 30 months when I was 23, 25 years old, and enrolled 3,500 students in 30 months, which I don't think anybody had ever done that. But pretty much everything that got that off the ground was that Nightingale principle. And I'm not sure I had heard the quote by that point, but I had lived in the Library of Congress studying direct response marketing in Washington, D.C. while I was still there, figuring out everything I could, and launched direct mail campaigns back in the early 80s to do that, and every other thing else that I could do. And what I then found, which you're finding coming from hockey, is that all the same principles apply. And until you break people in any niche out of the mode of just looking around at what everybody else is doing, they never have any particular great breakthroughs. They just end up, the definition of mediocrity is looking at what everybody else is doing and just copying what they're doing.
It's amazing because people ask me, I have a young daughter who's 10 years old, and people ask me all the time, they said, what's it like being a father in 2023? And they're expecting you to be, negative about it. And I said, what do you mean? This is the greatest year in history to ever be alive. I mean, you, me, we're awash in abundance, opportunity. wealth like never before. There's never, ever been a greater time to be an entrepreneur. There's never been a better time to be a husband. There's never been a better time to be a father, the whole deal. So I'll give you an example of how there's no doors with direct response. So the marketing I used in the insurance business made me number one in the barbershop business, made me number one in the hockey business, made me number one in the window washing business. So we move our family to Naples, Florida last year and buy a house. So we go this year after Christmas, and my daughter's 10 years old. And she comes to me the second day. We live in a gated community in Naples in the winter. We live in Canada in the summer. And she comes up to me. I'm sitting at the pool. I think I'm reading your book. And she says to me on a Sunday afternoon, she goes, we're only there 3 days. She goes, Daddy, I'd like to start my next venture. And I said, okay. I mean, she's an entrepreneurial kid. She has the dreamer's disease, right? Yep. So I jump out of my chair. I put your book down. I said, what do you want to do? And it's amazing. She says, well, I want to start a dog walking company. I said, okay, there seems to be lots of dogs in this community. People have lots of bucks. I said, okay, who is it? Who? She says, well, she knows who the who is. She sees all these people walking dogs first thing and whatever. I said, what are you going to sell, sweetie? She goes, I'm going to sell time and convenience. She's 10 years old, time and convenience. She said, if I do the fly, I said, how are you going to reach these people? She goes, I'm going to come out and I'm going to do door-to-door flyers. And I said, okay. She said, will you do the paper? I said, yes. I said, you have to design the flyer. I said, if you do it in crayon, will that be better than if you type it? She said, I think it will be. So she goes into a room 20 minutes later, talking to guys here who takes them 20 years to do something. 20 minutes later, a 10-year-old comes out with a 2-sided flyer because paper is expensive, ink is cheap. She comes out with both sides. She has a headline on both sides, and she has a drawing, and she has her mom's cell phone number to call and text, whatever. So I'm like, wow, okay, you've got it. You've got everything on this thing. It's going to get delivered to these doors. So she said, will you print off 25 of these? So I go in my office, I print off 25 of them. So Stephen, we walk out the front door with our dog on a Sunday late afternoon, and I don't do anything. I make her do all the toe-to-toe, belly-to-belly. I make her do the selling. That's what I want to give her. And we literally go to 25 homes, and she walks up to the door and she puts it right under the mat. So we do this 25 homes, and then we go back. There's 3 techs waiting for my wife, Krista, 3 people. She signs up 2 of them. So she's a smart kid. I said, okay, are you going to just do 1 walk at $5? Or she said, no, I sell them for 5 walks with 1 free. So she gets, the $25 instead. Mm-hmm. So then she says to me, she goes, can we do this every day after school, 15 flyers a day? I said, absolutely. To make a short story long, when we left there 3 weeks ago, she made hundreds and hundreds of cash dollars by this little dog walking thing that she did a couple of days a week in that community using direct response. Mm-hmm. She had the upsell, she did door to door. And as a father, I make sure that she handles all of the sales part. But it just shows you that there's no limits. There's no my business is different. And she had a lemonade stand the week before we left. I said, listen, we're not going to live in this great country of America, in this great state of Florida, in this great city of Naples without giving back. So she goes, I'm going to do a lemonade stand. Direct mail again. She takes all of these flyers, 100 flyers, and she delivers them to every home in our neighborhood. Emery's lemonade stand. But here's the thing. She takes a page out of Grant Cardone's Give the Lemonade Away for Free. You can make a donation. So instead of a cup of lemonade being $2, it's free lemonade this Friday. So where does she set up her stand? At the main gate. Does she ask for permission? No, because you're not allowed to do that stuff. She sets up her thing at the front gate. And I said, listen, we get emails from the association. What do you think? Do you think that they would send an email around? She walks up to the clubhouse and she befriends the person who does all that. And they send an email out to every resident. They put a thing on the Facebook page. She made $5,700 in 2 hours with her lemonade stand. Then she writes a letter to Alfie Oakes, who owns the famous grocery store supermarket, Food to Table in Naples, asking if he'll donate. He got back to her 2 days ago and donated all the stuff we had already done. $5,700 in 2 hours selling lemonade for a charity out front in Naples. You tell me we're not in the greatest time in history to be alive. A 10-year, like I said to my guys, I said, my kid just kicked your ass 6 ways to Sunday. I got guys who are waiting for a year to do a thank you card. I got guys that are waiting 5 years to send an email. When I counted it all up, and I did a webinar on this, there's 19 things my 10-year-old did to make that a success. 19 things, from email to Facebook to videos to old school shoe leather. And then after it, she follows up. She raised, actually at the door, she raised about $3,000. She raised 2,000 after. And then she comes to me and she says, Daddy, will you send an email to your list selling this webinar of the 19 things she did? And if somebody donates, they'll give $100 or whatever. So half the money was made from my list after the event. But that's the dreamer's disease right there. Like, there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur than right now.
I love it. And probably anybody who's a direct response type, I was still running the numbers in my head. Let's say 25 to 3 to 1. So 25 flyers on doors, three contacts, 1 immediate sale, 2 in pending sales, and then the repetition from there. And I got to tell you, getting the average 50-year-old financial advisor to just understand the 25 to 3 to 1 sometimes feels like beating your head against a brick wall.
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books, and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
You know, kids are great, and you're right about the opportunity. I remember my son, and he must have been 4 or 5. And he wanted to be a YouTuber. So he's, making videos in one thing or another, and I'm just kind of humoring him along the way. But I've always had the opinion, with me, when I went into the martial arts business, my teachers in the martial arts business said, you can go play karate for a couple of years and then get a real job. And of course, I was immediately within about 18 months grossing more and netting more than all the people who said that. But my son wanted to be a YouTuber, and he really hadn't gotten my attention other than playing along with it. And then one day he shows up with an article from Forbes magazine and read me the top 20 YouTubers by income level. I'm still about half asleep going, oh, okay, this is a real business. I got you. And it's as a tangent, my daughter did Girl Scouts, my son did Boy Scouts, and I got to tell you, the Girl Scouts kick ass. The Boy Scouts are wimps. The Girl Scouts, when it comes to Girl Scout cookies, they make them sell. They give them scripts. They teach them how to talk to people. And then the Boy Scouts, it's all the moms who go sell popcorn to raise money. It's like, wait a minute, the number one skill set they should be learning here is how to talk to people and how to sell, and you're taking it away from them by doing it for them. But in that case, a shout out to the Girl Scouts. They teach those girls how to be entrepreneurial and how to go sell and how to contact people. But I couldn't agree more. There's so much opportunity, and compared to when I started my business 40 years ago this year, and I think back, I mean, we had to buy $10,000 Comcast or Merlin phone systems to be able to have 3 incoming lines. And I did big movie promotions with the first Karate Kid movie, and I literally had to go down with an X-Acto knife and cut stuff out and go to a poster shop and had them silkscreen posters to be able to put posters up in the movie theaters. You go back to what it was like to run a business 40 years ago versus now, you and I can accomplish more in 5 minutes than I could have gotten done in a lot of this stuff in a week back then, no matter how hard you were working.
It's amazing because what we talked about earlier, I couldn't agree more, is thin skin.
Yep.
So one of the things as a father, or even my guys are grandfathers, is when I'm out there delivering these flyers for my daughter, I make her do everything. I don't lift a finger, right? I'm her grunt.
Right.
And I make her go up there. I make her get the no. And when we're out there, Stephen, what are we talking about? I'm telling her stories about people like Sarah Buckley. And she's like, who's Sarah Buckley? And I'm like, well, she's the Billionaire Spanx owner. And I talk about Sarah. I heard her speak at Russell Brunson's event, and she talked about how she sold fax machines and photocopy machines door to door. And people used to take her business card and they would rip it and they would put it and they throw it in her face. Not everybody, but somebody, right? And she talked about how there's not one single high achieving performer who doesn't have a history of toe-to-toe sales. There's no exceptions. I don't know anybody either. Like, you have a background in that. I have a background in that. Nick Saban has a background in that. Every great coach, Bobby Knight everybody who's anybody has a background in sales. So I tell her the Sarah Buckley story when we're walking around, because I said to her, I said, sweetie, a home run with this flyer, a home run is 5%. I said, if you're really good, 4%. I said, if you're, average to whatever, 3%. So she has this in her mind at age 10, that failure is winning. She has this mentality where the only losing is if you don't try. If you don't create the flyer or the postcard and you don't deliver it. And she says that about some of her friends at school. She says, those people don't win because they don't try. And I said, what did Sarah Buckley's dad say every night at the kitchen table when her and her brother were sitting there? Sarah Buckley's dad would say, what did you fail at today? What did you fail at today? And she said at the time, she thought her old man was crazy. But then as she got into the entrepreneurial and people were ripping up her business card and throwing it in her face, she said that transformed her mindset into the only losing is not trying. And failing forward, I call it swinging for the fences. And like my daughter, she's like, Daddy, if I make 5%, it's a home run. So you did the numbers. She got like a 3% on this flyer. I'm like, man, that's a good job. And that's part of the mindset is no means not now. You know that. And swinging for the fences when everybody in this world, 99% of people right now, wake up every day and they play not to lose. They wake up every day and they get in the fetal position. And this goes back to my aggression as a badass entrepreneur is I want to get up every day and play offense. I want to get up every day and swing for the fences. And it's interesting too, because most parents, I drive my kid to school every day. And most parents, moms and dads, the kid gets out of the car and they're like, drive safe or have a good day. In the McClean household, we have none of that. My daughter always has the same thing for 7 years. The last thing I say to her when I drop her off at the schoolyard, play to win, play offense, play to win. And it's just a mindset, but that's what that's what we need to build in our younger generation is there's unlimited opportunity and playing offense, and what other people think is irrelevant.
Yeah. And that last part seems to be the hardest to get people to understand, isn't it? That what other people think is irrelevant. I always paraphrase it as the only people whose vote counts are the ones that are going to give you money, right? So I don't care what people who aren't going to buy from me think. I only care about what people who are going to buy from me, and maybe even narrow it down. People that I want to buy from me, not just the ones who might be willing to spend money, because that's even a smaller subset. But I'll never understand there's such a reluctance to first build that avatar, go all the way back to the beginning, build that avatar client. So you have, as you said on your note card, this is exactly who I'm talking to. And so I'm going to use exactly the language that person will understand. I'm going to use the language that person will be attracted to. I'm going to use the language and the examples and so forth that person will be attracted to. And then there's just such a reluctance to be anything. And again, I've never seen anything as bad as the financial advisors, maybe lawyers, CPAs, and financial advisors, anybody in the insurance business. I guess I could overgeneralize to that. But they all want to look the same. They want to be the same. They want to not differentiate themselves by anything, and they want to lead with product rather than lead with positioning themselves. How do you? I guess there's no good explanation for that other than fear and thought that if they cast the net wider, they're going to get a bigger group, which it actually works the opposite. How would you explain that syndrome?
Well, it's what you hear growing up. It's what you hear. We're all hardwired, by the way, to conform. We're all hardwired to conform. And my dad tells the best story about the entire thing, that I'm afraid to conform. To me, conforming is losing. And when I find myself conforming, I snap out of it. And it all goes back to my dad's fundamental story. So my dad was abandoned as a newborn baby at the hospital, and both his parents were gone at birth. And he became you become part of the ward or whatever, foster care, after 30 days in the hospital. Can you imagine being abandoned at birth? All of a sudden now you're a ward of the state, and then they put you in a home. Hopefully you're adopted. So my dad got adopted after 30 days into a local family, no entrepreneurs, mom and dad, salt of the earth, but just working to exist. He grew up in a home with older brothers and sisters, addiction issues from them, working at the post office, drinking on the weekends, smoking. There wasn't one entrepreneurial fiber in that home. And my dad, I always said to my dad, we'd go out for lunch, and I said, Dad, you've had 14 companies. I said, you've made millions of dollars. You've been working since you were 15 years old. You've got 70 years of entrepreneurial success. How in the hell have you done it? And also successful father, grandfather, great-grandfather, physically fit, the whole deal. And he would always look across the table. We'd be having a beer and a sandwich. He'd say, simple. He goes, when I was 15 years old, he goes, I looked around and I saw what everybody else was doing. My mom, my dad, my adopted siblings. And he goes, I didn't know then what I wanted, but I knew sure as hell I didn't want this.
Yeah.
I didn't want the poverty. I didn't want the addiction. I didn't want the unhealthiness. I didn't want any of it. He goes, as I matured, some mentors came into my life, and I decided that whenever I came to a fork in the road, I would always ask myself, what is the majority doing, and do the opposite. And he goes, I literally, like Earl Nightingale said, I've gone through my life without making too many major mistakes because of that. So I have it easy. I had a role model like him and my mom. My dad had no role models. All he had in his life are examples of what not to do. And what did he use it as an excuse? No, he used it as fuel and gasoline to say, I'm going to do the opposite and see where that takes me. So I just think that we're hardwired to follow the crowd, and we just have to really, really be mentally conscious that we're doing the opposite of everybody else. And I challenge my guys on every training that I have. I'm like, you call yourself a badass. You call yourself a badass. You take this pride that you're the 1%. And then I make them do they document their day. And I'm like, you know what? You're following the crowd more than you're heading the other way. You're on your phone 10 hours a day. You're watching television. You're watching vomit politics. You're 30 pounds overweight. So I keep holding them accountable for heading the opposite way. But we're hardwired to follow. So we have to make a conscious decision to do the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. And, especially for those who are plugged into a much larger company, because you know how all the big companies and the companies in the financial industry for sure are following the political whims of the time, and they're forcing conformity, and they're really enforcing mediocrity. I was reading an article, I was laughing about it. Merrill, as part now of Bank of America, they were talking about they weren't doing their normal training program, which consisted of a massive number of cold calls up front because of their diversity objectives, and it was weeding out. Basically, it was weeding out people who aren't willing to do 100 cold dials every couple of hours and take a lot of rejection. But in their case, they said it was weeding out too many people of color and women and so forth. But then their only marketing suggestion was cold contacting on LinkedIn. I was like, well, there's a lot other marketing approaches you can take other than just cold door knocking. But it's certainly better than not doing anything. Um, I guess the thing I keep trying to beat people across the head is that the big companies are teaching mediocrity, and really what they care about is the norm, not the end of the tail, the top 1%. And the top 1% is always going to be the ones that annoy them, that are doing things their own way, that are doing things differently, that are doing things in an extreme, and are willing to take the risk and so forth. One of my favorite quotes in this industry was Ken Fisher. And basically he was talking about when he implemented direct response marketing in the industry. And he said, everybody thought I was daft. When I did internet marketing, they thought it would never work. When I did TV marketing, they thought it would never work. But the backstory was, very early on, when it was working really well, he was afraid that the big guys were going to knock him off because it was working so well. And he was out looking for a partner to be able to scale it up, until he realized that all of them had already decided that was what was working so well for him wouldn't work. And then I have seen it inside several of these companies working directly on the inside, as they tell them, basically it's all belly to belly referral marketing, and that's the only thing that they'll let them do. It's just the strangest thing in the world to me.
I started in the insurance business with 500 postcards.
Mm-hmm.
I walked into my dad's office. I said, "What do you think about this postcard?" He goes, "My dad is one of these guys." He said, "What I think doesn't matter. Let's test it. How much does this cost?" I said, "It's $500, 50 cents to mail, 50 cents to print." I'll never forget, Stephen, driving those 500 postcards to the local post office. And I was the sales guy on the phone. Nobody ever did anything like this. This is before Geico, before Progressive. And I hurried back to the office because I knew those postcards were going to be delivered that day or the next day. And I'll never forget, I had everything set up. I had my headset, the whole thing. Nobody had ever heard of Michael McClean in the business. My dad was the third biggest agent in the town. Everybody was a good little boy. And I'll never forget, my dad said, because I showed him all the marketing I was going to do. He said, "Son, if this works, they'll never see you coming." So to make a long story short, I did 500 that first month. And basically it was just a small circle around my desk. And when I sold the business 17 years later, we were mailing that same flyer 17 years later, 140,000 copies a month. I killed a lot of trees in my insurance career.
Good.
If I could tell you the number, my critics, I mean, it was incredible. I knew I was on the right track because the big $30 million agency and we were like 3 million at the time. They didn't take kindly to a guy like me entering the business. What does he know about it? He's a hockey guy. I just kept 500, then 1,000, then 5,000. I was in 60 books. Then I got on television. Then I got on radio. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget, the first year I did this, one of my biggest insurance companies, big school, they never had any time to visit my dad. They would just whatever. And they walked in with the flyer the first year with the bonus check. And we were just getting started. And you could tell that he had been to our competition in town. And he put it on the desk in front of my dad. I didn't own the company yet. And he said, "What is this?" He says, "This is very unprofessional. It was my auto flyer with me on the front, save 35%. And he handed my dad his commission check for something like $4,000 for the whole year. And he walked out. And I said to my dad, I said, that was humiliating. My dad had been in the business for 45 years at that time. 1 year later, I own the company. This guy, I get a phone call. He says, "Oh, I want to take you to lunch, Michael." And I'm like, "Really? You never took me to lunch in your life?" All of a sudden, he says, "I want to deliver the check." I said, "Well, there's no need for you to deliver the bonus check. Just let me know what it is." He says, "Well, it's 6 figures, so I have to deliver it." 1 year later. Mm-hmm. So he comes in and he delivers the check. And I said, and it went from 4,000 to 180,000 of whatever. And I gave the check to my dad as part of the payment of the business. But I'll never, ever forget that. We went from "you're embarrassing the industry" to "we don't agree with you doing this" to "oh my God, this is amazing." That guy I never let him darken the door again. I never went to a golf tournament. I never did anything. All I did was
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
sell insurance. And just remember that my dad said there, just always remember that. They, when I was being criticized, they were all against me. And then when I started to sell, they were all for me. So
did they still think it was unprofessional?
It drove them crazy because they're all boozers, right? These company guys, I called them cubicle idiots.
Yeah.
And they could never get to me because I was too busy. They'd want to drop by the office. And this is back in the days where the companies had the money to have these guys on the road, right? Got to drop in and see Steven. I got to ask Steven if he wants to golf. I'll golf if he's any good. And it's all boozing, right? I had no part of it. So it would drive them crazy. I would make them mail a bonus check for $500,000. They would phone me up in February at the end of the year and they'd say, Michael, this is amazing. We're so proud of you. And I'm like, put it in the mail, bozo. You're not getting any of my time. And I just loved it because I have a long memory. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a week that went by that I wasn't turned into the marketing, whatever you call compliance. I had a file a foot thick. And I remember in 17 years, I never once ever had to change anything but my $30 million a guy up the street, he would literally, Stephen, take whatever he received in the mail and he would send it to the compliance because financial is the same as insurance.
Sure.
And he can't guarantee this. He can't say this. He can't use testimonials. And the one time that we did have to go in front of the compliance board, I'll never forget when we're walking out, they said, there's nothing here that you have to change. This was a waste of everybody's time. One of the board directors comes up, puts his arm around me and says, would you mind if I got a copy of that warranty, that guarantee? I'd like to use it in my agency. So it's a dog and pony show at the end of the day. And we just focused on our own game.
Well, and there's yet another badass suggestion there is people are so cowed by compliance concerns and you got to follow the rules and you don't want the SEC or FINRA or any of those guys breathing down your throat. But within the big companies, there's so many layers of Bill Glazier, Dan Kennedy's old partner, he used to call it the sales prevention department. But every one of these companies have the sales prevention department. And it's always amazing to me how many of them have, the marketing person is some 27-year-old recent college graduate who doesn't know shit, had never sold anything. And a corporate office has nobody who's ever been belly to belly, face to face, and sold anything. So they're making decisions not based upon what is going to be the best interest of the salespeople, hence what's going to be the best interest of making money, of making sales, but all these other political concerns and other concerns that just don't have anything to do with running your business. It's just absolutely amazing to me. But the important takeaway there, and there's so many of them, but the secret of being a badass, if you will, is plowing your own path, knowing what the rules are, following the rules, but doing it in such a way that you're going to ignore all of the naysayers, because most people are going to be naysayers. If you're going to be in the top 1%, you got 99% who aren't willing to do what you're willing to do.
Well, I walked into my dad's office my first year when you talk about thick skin and thin skin. And my dad, I walked into him, we were doing an email every week. And I got some lady who responded, don't email me or whatever. And I was wet behind the ears first year in the business. And I walk into my dad's office, he's got the head down, he's working. And he says, what do you want? And I'm like, well, I printed it off the email and I just starting to build an email list and I'd sent some email and I said, well, look at this response we got from this lady. And my dad looks up from his glasses. I'll never forget it. didn't even put his pen down. He said, "Is she a buyer?" And I said, "Pardon?" And he goes, "Does she give us money?" And I said, "I don't think so. I don't even think she's a client." He goes, "Then why are we having this conversation?" And then I'm about to turn and walk out of the office. He goes, "The sooner you get out of high school, Michael, your mentality," he says, "the better we'll off be here." He says, "The only people we give a shit about are the people that bring us money, refer us, and are the people that we want to attract." So that's the last time I ever walked in my dad's office with a complaint from somebody who would never buy from us and never, ever, ever give us money. And we had a guy, for your guys, Stephen, I had a guy that we always outsourced life insurance and financial planning, right? We did the whole thing, but we didn't have an in-house guy. So there was a family friend who did what your guys do, right? And he was an ordinary financial guy, right? Always, stay in the company cubicle. So I went to him one time and I said, "Bob," I said, "listen," I said, "we're kicking ass in all these other areas, home insurance, car insurance. What if I do a marketing piece for you and put it in my newsletter? 9,000 newsletters a month mailed, right?" He says, "Long as I don't get in trouble, Michael, long as I don't get in trouble." I said, "Okay, Bob, don't worry. I'll be the first guy through the door. I'll take the bullet for you." So to make a long story short, it didn't take me long to figure out what I wanted to mail. So I did an Ann Landers letter, where the letter was about somebody that didn't buy life insurance for $4 a month. And then the father died and left the family destitute. The fear, that's how you sell life insurance.
Yeah.
That's how you sell, right? And on the other side, a letter from him. Well, Stephen, I put this in the newsletter and we mailed out 9,000. And I'll never forget, a couple days later, he goes, "That didn't," and I got him to pay for the printing, right? And he goes, "Well, that didn't work, but I'm just as glad because, I didn't want to get in trouble." Well, day number 3, 66 referrals by the phone for him. And this is a guy who's used to getting one referral a month, right? He phones me up. He goes, "Michael," he goes, "holy," he said, "I got 67 people to return this call for." I said, "Well, Bob, you better get to work if you want to retire early." To make that long story short, he literally cut 10 years off his working career. He said he was in his 40s at the time, to work to 65. Because of those inserts that we started doing every single month, he retired at age 56 instead of 65. But because I did it, because I took the bullets for him at first, he was able to do it. But he became a hero in his company. Actually, they liked him because he was selling life and financial products. They didn't care how he was doing it.
You bet. Well, and direct response marketing works. In other words, you're telling me. And back to Gary Halbert, that was a very Gary Halbert-ish approach. Whether you had studied him yet or not, that would have made him proud.
Well, it was interesting. I said to Bob, the financial guy, I said, "If you showed the company this Ann Landers letter, what would happen?" He goes, "We wouldn't even get started."
Oh, yeah.
I said, "Okay, I'll put it in my newsletter." And it was interesting, with those 67 leads he got, there was only one complaint. And the person was furious. They were, "How dare you, Michael? Would you use this family to do all this stuff?" And once again, I'm like, 67 leads that we're going to protect those families. And we got one person over here who disagrees. But one of the mentalities that comes back to me, I talked to my mastermind guys last night about this. Stephen, if you believe in your product, if you honestly believe in the martial arts product or your coaching and financial, or if I believe in what I believe, isn't it a disservice not to sell? Isn't it your moral obligation to not leave people hanging? Is it my job just to shoot a video and then that's it? Or is it my job just to do a podcast and that's it? Or is it my moral obligation, if I believe in what I believe in, to give the person the option to buy something that'll serve them? And I just think a lot of financial guys, a lot of insurance guys didn't believe in what they were selling. That sold umbrella and life insurance. I believed in that stuff. I believe it's wrong not to have life insurance. So it was easy for me to do those things because it was my moral obligation to make sure people were protected.
Of course. If we could just wind back to the quote from your father about the complaint and emblazon that on a plaque and have that in front of everybody every day, that would 10 times their business, to steal from Grant Cardone. That would add a zero to almost anybody's business. Just remembering that one point that your father made so brilliantly. It's absolutely amazing. But there's so many lessons here, and a big part of the lesson, go all the way back to your daughter, is go do something. I tell my guys, if you can't think of anything else to do, get off your ass and start, take a left out your door and start knocking on doors. And I have about 100 better strategies than that. But if you can't think of anything else to do, just get off your ass and go do something to try to round up traffic. And so many of them just sit on their butt and wait for something to come to them until they fail. It's within the financial business, I'm seeing about a 95% failure rate in the first 3 years. And most of it, in my opinion, is just people won't go, work the product, but they're also not being taught, and they're waiting to be taught effective marketing techniques by organizations that either don't know them or won't teach them. So it's so important to seek out people like you or people like me to really go and study. Hell, Gary Halbert's newsletter is online now for free. You can go read, I think 100% of the copies, or the vast majority of them. It's just genius stuff. What was the other one? The Boren letters to his son, the letters from prison. And it's the simplest thing ever, but he just kind of walks through, how to come up with a product and who to sell it to and how to find an audience and how he would go target it. And that type of targeting and that kind of focus is what it takes to build any business.
I had a former NHL player 10 years ago in my mastermind. He had just completed his pro hockey career, big guy, good looking guy. He's got the 3 young children, the beautiful wife. He goes, Michael, I'm going to go into financial planning. What's your recommendation? Mm-hmm. And there was a lady in my mastermind at the time, and she goes, I'm friends with the #1 financial consultant in America for this company. #1. It's not even close. Every year. She said, how would you like to go spend a day with him for nothing? And coming from pro hockey, this guy's used to extreme hard work. He's got a magnetic personality. He's got no bad habits. He's used to playing for great coaches. He said, all right, set it up. He would have paid to go. But anyway, he goes, Stephen, and it's in Arizona, and he spends a day and a half with this #1 financial planner in America for this particular company with a 95% failure rate. 95% of the planners who sign up, once the first year's over, they're done, right?
They're done. Yeah.
They've exhausted their wives and their cousins and all this. Well, I'll tell you, he calls me after he gets home 2 days later, and he goes, Michael, it's what you said 100 times. He said, after I spent a day with this guy, he said, it's no wonder he's #1. It's no wonder he's the Super Bowl champion. No wonder he's the Bill Belichick of the NFL. Like, unbelievable. He said, we spent an hour at the end of the day handwriting 15 thank you cards, not his secretary, not his executive assistant, not some goofy font. He sat down and he wrote 15 handwritten thank you cards that day for 15 people that had impacted his business, coupled to employees, coupled to a charity, coupled to prospects. He said the simplicity was mind-boggling. But of course, this guy's been an amazing success with this. And he told my NHL player, he said, never stop telling that story. Nobody cares about the life insurance and the financial. Take care of that for me, but tell me more about playing pro. How much money did you make? And he's always been a storyteller since then. So he takes care of the peace of mind, but at the end of the day, just continues to tell that story. But he searched out the #1 person who was already getting the desired result. And now he's #1 in Canada for the same company.
I love it. I love it. One of the advisors that I work with, the first thing I did is I went and got him to give me a personal looking picture. In this case, it was him on a mountain bike rather than the stuffy behind the desk photo. And went and printed 1,000 note cards for him with the admonition. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to start sending this out every day, every referral, every client you meet with. They never got out of his trunk.
Oh,
they literally
good book.
They literally never got out of his trunk. Mike, I want to be respectful of your time here. I was going to make sure I share this with everybody on the meeting. I highly recommend any and all of your material. You've been so generous, by the way, with your feedback on my book. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. But this is a great title, How Not to Get Your Ass Kicked in Business and Life, at BadAssMillionaire.com. Is there something else that we should share with people to track down for you, or to look you up?
Yes, they can get a free copy of that book. I've sold thousands and thousands of copies, but about a month ago, I made it into a free PDF. That site, Stephen, is michaelmclean.coach, michaelmclean.coach. Go there, put in your name and email, and I will gift you a copy of that book, a PDF and an audio book, michaelmclean.coach. That also adds them to my email list. I shoot a video every single day on my morning walk. I'm at 630 consecutive days with a video. So if you're the type of entrepreneur who likes a mental kick in the pants every day at 5:59 a.m., I'm your guy for that. But nonetheless, you can get a free copy of that book, How to Not Get Your Ass Kicked in Business and Life, at my brand new site, michaelmclean.coach. And you can opt in for my daily videos. So it all starts and ends with the book. And that book is my 25 rules that I've learned in pro hockey and in business. Basically a lot of stuff of what to do and what not to do, but the 25 rules that have governed my life. And it's the reason I'm living a life of personal sovereignty now. I've got to that point where I always ask myself, does this fit in my world? If not, the answer is always no. So michaelmclean.coach.
And it's amazing how people might discount that the same skill set it takes to fill a hockey arena is the same skill set that it requires to feed 67 new financial planning life insurance prospects in a couple of days. It's the exact same skill set. And it's the willingness to get out there, to get to figure out your avatar client, to communicate in such a way that they're going to be highly receptive, and everybody else who is not your target client is not going to be receptive to the message, and getting that message to the right people.
Sales. I mean, I don't think there's anything a person can gift a child, a teenager, an adult, is that ability to sell. Show me anything in life that isn't selling. You want to raise money for the Rotary Club? That's selling. You want to raise money for the food bank? That's selling. You want to hire great people? That's selling. You want to build a football team? That's selling. And that's, I mean, you want to sell life insurance policies? That's selling. It's just, and it's almost like a lost art. So you don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to, like you said, know the who, and then have your ways of going about it. And I've really noticed in the last few years, we've gone away from a lot of online, and we've gone back to a lot of paper and ink offline. And I just find this is something for your people to test, but offline now is better than ever in my life. And I'm going back. I mean, I used to send 140,000 flyers a month. If I'm in the insurance business today, I'm going all in on killing trees. That's a physical book that you just showed there. Yep. Like I'm literally, Stephen, building a fax list right now. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fax numbers. Everybody's like, Michael, what are you doing building a fax list? Nobody has a fax machine. All of my guys are professionals like your guys. All the dentists, all the doctors, all the financial guys, they all fax machines. Sure. So I literally send a fax to my clients every single week. And it's just amazing. I do a physical newsletter. I do a physical book. So I think that it's been better than ever now to be in the mailbox, because, as you know, nobody's in the mailbox anymore.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I tell people the average person is getting 200 emails a day and 4 pieces of mail a day. And with an ebook, and I read books on Kindle, but I have, I don't know, 800 books in Kindle, and if it's not the one I just bought, it's lost in forever. But when somebody sends me a physical book, you joked earlier about using my book as a doorstop. I joke about them. You know, there you go. I
couldn't get it off my kitchen table. My wife said, "For God's sakes, read that."
There you go. I love it. But you know, I get people's books and they end up as a coaster on my desk, or they end up stacked somewhere. But I never forget that I have it, and I keep bumping into it. I tell people about our newspaper ads years ago when I was running the martial arts schools. The average person who called had 5 or 10 of them under the magnet on the refrigerator before they got around to calling. And it just, mail, a book, anything physical sits around, stays around, is in front of them, where if it's digital, it comes and goes immediately. Certainly you get some response, but I think the seduction of email is that it's free. But really what you want is a good ROI. You know what I'm using a lot of now, you'll appreciate this, Michael, is an awful lot of online lead generation with offline follow-up. So they're immediately getting boxes and books and note cards and popcorn and all of that stuff forever. And again, we could go on forever, but I find a lot of people give up on leads way too quickly. They think if they don't respond to me in a week that they're dead. A lot of my clients, they had been following me for 7 years before they ever responded, or 3 years or 4 years. And by the way, the average lifetime value is going to be $7,500,000. Why do I care if I spent $100 or $200 or $300 on them before I got them in? But hey, I want to be respectful of your time. We've gone a little over an hour, and I have very much enjoyed this. Anything you'd like to leave them with before we call?
I'll tell you one more book story, because most 99% of businessmen and women, they write a book like you did, and that's where it dies.
Right.
That's where it is. So we talk about, I am a proud and unabashed salesperson. So I want to set that example for my wife and for my daughter. It's the example I had growing up, that entrepreneurship is the path to freedom and personal sovereignty. So if you get in the back of my Cadillac Escalade, you can't get in the third row of seats. Why can you not get in the third row of my 2 vehicles? I have cases and cases of my physical book. Good. And I have cases of BadAss t-shirts. Mm-hmm. And my daughter sees these, and we don't go anywhere where I don't embarrass the family with gifts of my book. So I'll give you an example. In Naples, before we left the other day, we go over to a barbecue for Easter Monday. Well, I'm just about to I pull in the driveway. We're about to get out and go into the pool, and friends of ours in Florida. And my daughter reaches in the back of the Escalade and she says, "How many, Daddy?" And I said, let me do the math in my head. We'll probably have 15 people here. Give me 15 books and 15 medium t-shirts. And she gets them out and she hands them to me, and my wife's rolling her eyes. And it's about being omnipresent, right? It's about showing up like nobody else. Whether it's a FedEx package, you showed up like nobody else in my mailbox with this book and a letter and all that stuff. So we walk into the back and we show up. I said to the people, I said, "How many people?" They said 14. My daughter goes around and she hands 14 black BadAss Be Relentless t-shirts to these people. If they don't fit, he'll change them. And then I go around, I get everybody's name over the next 2 hours, and I leave them with a physical book, my business card, the Thud Factor, right? Boom. So it's interesting because I always give this stuff with no obligation. I don't care if I ever hear again. Sure. 3 of the people in there that I never knew from before are now part of my newsletter program. Mm-hmm. But this is what my daughter sees me doing constantly. Like I go to Dunkin' Donuts every day for my coffee at 7 a.m. So it's the last day and we're just about to leave. And my daughter's with me. She goes, "How many shirts?" Because the girls in Dunkin' Donuts, they treat me like gold. So I said, "Oh, the 3 girls are working this morning." And my daughter gets out 3 shirts, 3 books, and 3 $100 bills. And we walk in there to the girls that have taken care of us for the last 6 months. Book, t-shirt, $100 tip. And we walk out. I go, "I'll see you in 6 months." And that's just kind of the generosity and the giving with no thought of return that I want my daughter to see. But that's how you never turn it off as a salesperson.
You bet.
And that's how you sell books. That's how you use books.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you couldn't be more right. I've talked to a ton of advisors who have created a book and they just are sitting on their shelf. They haven't done anything at all. And then they're afraid to print it. They want to send people a PDF and think that that's the end all and be all. But we could go on for hours, but this has been great. I hope we will do this again sometime for yours or mine or both or either way. I have really enjoyed it. It's great to talk to somebody who thinks in a very similar way that I do, and I'll have to keep working on stealing that badass moniker from you.
I will send you a t-shirt. I think you look like a large.
Yep, a large is perfect. I need a badass t-shirt, that's for sure.
Well, it's something to wear every day.
Thank you, Michael. But and by the way, 15-3 wasn't a bad ratio there. You got 15 suspects, three came back on that. One ends up a high level client. That's worth it all day long times 10.
Well, it doesn't matter if I go for a massage or a haircut. My daughter walks in after me, and what's on there with the magazines? My book. She's like, "Patty, you're embarrassing me." I go, "Stay tuned."
Yeah, you've got to have thick skin.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It has
You're
been
welcome.
wonderful.